gets that count? The president got $84 from a timber company that he owns, and he's counted as a small business. Dick Cheney's counted as a small business. That's how they do things. That's just not right.
I own a timber company? That's news to me. Need some wood? Most small businesses are subchapter S corps. They just are. I met Grant Milliron, Mansfield, Ohio. He's creating jobs. Most small businesses, 70% of the new jobs in America are created by small business. His taxes are going up when you run up the top two brackets. It's a fact.
President Bush, the next question is for you, and it comes from Rob Fowler, who I believe is over in this area.
President Bush, 45 days after, 45 days after 9/11, Congress passed the Patriot Act, which takes away checks on law enforcement and weakens American citizens' rights and freedoms, especially Fourth Amendment rights. With expansions to the Patriot Act and Patriot Act 2, my question to you is, why are my rights being watered down and my citizens around me, and what are the specific justifications for these reforms?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really don't think your rights are being watered down. Matter of fact, I wouldn't support it if I thought that. Every action being taken against terrorists requires court order, requires scrutiny. As a matter of fact, the tools now given to the terrorist fighters are the same tools that we've been using against drug dealers and white-collar criminals. So I really don't think so. I hope you don't think that. I mean, because I think whoever's the president must guard your liberties, must not erode your rights in America. The Patriot Act is necessary, for example, because parts of the FBI couldn't talk to each other. The intelligence gathering and the law enforcement arms of the FBI just couldn't share intelligence under the old law. And that didn't make any sense. Our law enforcement must have every tool necessary to find and disrupt terrorists at home and abroad before they hurt us again. That's the task of the 21st century. And so I don't think the Patriot Act abridges your rights at all. And I know it's necessary. I can remember being upstate New York talking to FBI agents that helped bust the Lackawanna cell up there. And they told me they could not have performed their duty, the duty we all expect of them, if they did not have the ability to communicate with each other under the Patriot Act.
Senator Kerry, minute and a half.
Former Governor Roscoe, as chairman of the Republican Party, said he thought that the Patriot Act has to be changed and fixed. Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner, he's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, said over his dead body before it gets renewed without being thoroughly rechecked. Whole bunch of folks in America concerned about the way the Patriot Act has been applied. In fact, the Inspector General of the Justice Department found that John Ashcroft had twice applied it in ways that were inappropriate. People's rights have been abused. I met a man who spent 8 months in prison, wasn't even allowed to call his lawyer, wasn't allowed to get out. Finally, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois intervened and was able to get him out. This is in our country, folks, the United States of America. They've got sneak and peek searches that are allowed. They've got people allowed to go into churches now and political meetings without any showing of potential criminal activity or otherwise. Now, I voted for the Patriot Act. 99 United States senators voted for it. And the president's been very busy running around the country using what I just described to you as a reason to say, I'm wishy-washy, that I'm a flip-flopper. Now, that's not a flip-flop. I believe in the Patriot Act. We need the things in it that coordinate the FBI and the CIA. We need to be stronger on terrorism. But you know what we also need to do as Americans is never let the terrorists change the Constitution of the United States in a way that disadvantages our rights.
Senator Kerry, the next question is for you, and it comes from Elizabeth Long.
Senator Kerry, thousands of people have already been cured or treated by the use of adult stem cells or umbilical cord stem cells. However, no one has been cured by using embryonic stem cells. wouldn't it be wise to use stem cells obtained without the destruction of an embryo?
You know, Elizabeth, I really respect your the feeling that's in your question. I understand it. You know, I know the morality that's prompting that question, and I respect it enormously. But like Nancy Reagan and so many other people, you know, I was at a forum with Michael J. Fox the other day in New Hampshire, who's suffering from Parkinson's, and he wants us to do stem cell, embryonic stem cell. And this fellow stood up, and he was quivering. His whole body was shaking from the nerve disease, the muscular disease that he had. And he said to me and to the whole hall, he said, you know, don't take away my hope, because my hope is what keeps me going. Chris Reeve is a friend of mine. Chris Reeve exercises every single day to keep those muscles alive for the day when he believes he can walk again, and I want him to walk again. I think we can save lives. Now, I think we can do ethically guided embryonic stem cell research. We have 100,000 to 200,000 embryos that are frozen in nitrogen today from fertility clinics. These weren't taken from abortion or something like that. They're from a fertility clinic. And they're either going to be destroyed or left frozen. And I believe if we have the option, which scientists tell us we do, of curing Parkinson's, curing diabetes, curing you know, some kind of you know, paraplegic or quadriplegic or you know, a spinal cord injury, anything. That's the nature of the human spirit. I think it is respecting life to reach for that cure. I think it is respecting life to do it in an ethical way. And the president's chosen a policy that makes it impossible for our scientists to do that. I want the future, and I think we have to grab it.
Mr. President, minute and a half.
Embryonic stem cell research requires the destruction of life to create a stem cell. I'm the first president ever to allow funding, federal funding, for embryonic stem cell research. I did so because I too hope that we'll discover cures from the stem cells, and from the research derived. But I think we got to be very careful in balancing the ethics and the science. And so I made the decision we wouldn't spend any more money beyond the 70 lines, 22 of which are now in action. Because science is important, but so is ethics. So is balancing life. To destroy life, to save life is one of the real ethical dilemmas that we face. There's going to be hundreds of experiments off the 22 lines that now exist, that are active. And hopefully we find a cure. But as well, we need to continue to pursue adult stem cell research. I helped double the NIH budget to $28 billion a year to find cures. And the approach I took is one that I think is a balanced and necessary approach to balance science and the concerns for life.
Senator, 30 seconds, let's extend.
Well, you talk about walking a waffle line. He says he's allowed it, which means he's going to allow the destruction of life up to a certain amount, and then he isn't going to allow it. Now, I don't know how you draw that line, but let me tell you point blank, the lines of stem cells that he's made available, every scientist in the country will tell you, not adequate, because they're contaminated by mouse cells, and because there aren't 60 or 70, there are only about 11 to 20 now, and there aren't enough to be able to do the research because they're contaminated. We've got to open up the possibilities of this research, and when I am president, I'm going to do it,
Senator,
because we have to.
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Let me make sure you understand my decision. Those stem cell lines already existed. The embryo had already been destroyed prior to my decision. I had to make the decision, do we destroy more life? Do we continue to destroy life? I made the decision to balance science and ethics.
Mr. President, the next question is for you, and it comes from Jonathan Michelson. Over here.
Mr. President, if there were a vacancy in the Supreme Court and you had the opportunity to fill that position today, who would you choose and why?
I'm not telling. I really haven't picked anybody yet. Plus, I want them all voting for me. I would pick somebody who would not allow their personal opinion to get in the way of the law. I would pick somebody who would strictly interpret the Constitution of the United States. Let me give you a couple of examples, I guess, of the kind of person I wouldn't pick. I wouldn't pick a judge who said that the Pledge of Allegiance couldn't be said in a school because it had the words "under God" in it. I think that's an example of a judge allowing personal opinion to enter into the decision-making process as opposed to strict interpretation of the Constitution. Another example would be the Dred Scott case, which is where judges years ago